Selamat pagi semua. Welcome to the International Habibie Festival. Please give a big round of applause. So we will be your hosts for this year's International Youth Forum as well as the Education Forum. My name is Aisha and I go to Sekolah Pelita Harapan.
My name is Ishita and I'm from India.
And before we get started, we'd like to invite everybody to sing the Indonesia National Anthem.
The Indonesia Youth Forum aims to be a voice for the youth. It's organized by the Indonesia Economic Forum, whose vision is to promote economic and social growth in Indonesia. It's a platform that brings entrepreneurs, pioneers, experts, all under the same roof to inspire and debate on all issues that are currently plaguing this ecosystem of education.
We're delighted to have students from Indonesia, India, as well as Singapore to come join us for the next 2 days in the Indonesia Youth Forum as well as the Education Forum. And to start, we'd like to invite ShoebKagda to the stage to presentate his welcome address.
Can we have a huge round of applause, please?
Thank you very much. Our student MCs, I think they deserve a round of applause too for doing a great job this morning. Good morning and welcome to the International Youth Forum. As the founder of the Indonesia Economic Forum, I have to say that this is one of my proudest moments to be able to say that here in this room is probably the largest gathering of international students in Indonesia today. So give yourself a round of applause. You guys are great. As mentioned earlier, we have students from Singapore, from India, and of course across Indonesia. I'm so glad to see so many schools, both international as well as local schools, present this morning. A very warm welcome to our friends and our guests from Singapore who have made this trip here, led by Faeza. I'm honored to announce that this youth forum is a bit different. It is a youth forum of young leaders, by young leaders, and for young leaders. The issues discussed today will be highlighted at tomorrow's Indonesia Education Forum, where we hope that the leaders of Indonesia, the policy makers, the educators, will hear your voice, which will be loud and clear today. Before we move on, I think I need to say a big thank you to some very important people who have worked tirelessly to put this forum together. From Singapore, a very big thank you to Faeza Sirajuddin, who I have to say was the one who put this thought in our heads of organizing the youth forum. When was it? About 4 or 5 months ago. So in a very short period of time, I think it's amazing that we have put this program together. I would also like to say a big thank you for Professor Anil, who has made a trip all the way from India to join us this morning. A very big thank you also to Adit Gopalan and Maria Indrawati, who have worked behind the scenes to make sure that all of you are here this morning. So a very big thank you and a warm round of applause for them. This forum is not only being experienced by all of you in this room. Millions and millions of your fellow students across Indonesia are viewing what's happening here, are listening to what's happening here by live stream, which is being organized by TV Edukasi, and a very, very big thank you and a huge debt of gratitude to Pustekkom, the Ministry of Education and Culture, for organizing them to be here and for telecasting this so that across Indonesia, children, students are viewing this forum this morning. So to each and every one of you, a very big thank you. Today, the day belongs to our young leaders. They will run this program, they will deliver the keynote addresses, they will run the debates and the panel discussions. We will have workshop sessions which they will participate in. So really, it's all about you guys today. What's our role? Our role is basically to help you along. But what does the future hold? One of my favorite authors and thinkers is Thomas Friedman. And he's written a book called Thank You for Being Late. And in that book, he talks about accelerated change. The world that we are living in today is changing at a rate faster than at any period in human history and broader than at any period in human history. What this means is that our lives are going to be totally disrupted. The question is, how do we respond to this change that's coming? How do we create new opportunities from the challenges that are facing us? As we all know, and as we watch television every day, we see on the screens a typhoon that just hit Japan that caused devastating damage. We in Indonesia today are facing a long drought, which is causing forest fires in Sumatra, in Kalimantan, that is affecting our neighbors because of the haze. That is climate change. Climate does not know any boundaries. We are all connected. How do we respond to this change? Another major force that is going to affect us going forward is technology. Technology is disrupting every aspect of our lives, whether we are at work, whether we are at play, whether we are in just our daily lives, we will be disrupted. Which is why this year the Obid Habibie Festival's theme really is, I think, very appropriate. So I hope that after this you will have a chance to experience the magic of the Obid Habibie Festival. And for that, I think you have to thank Mr. Sachin Gopalan, who has thought about how that experience is going to affect your life. So a very big thank you to him. How do we respond to these changes is going to be critical. We can choose to be defeatist and say we can't do much about it, we just have to put up with it. Or we can say, no, we can make a meaningful difference. We can make meaningful change in our lives. I believe in the power and the promise of youth. What you guys do today, what you will discuss, and the solutions that you may offer to the world is going to be reviewed. Remember, millions and millions of Indonesians, as well as Singaporeans, Indians. We have a gentleman from China. Thank you for joining us here too. They will all be listening in to this day. So what you do today will affect millions of minds. You might be able to change thinking. You will ignite their imagination. Most importantly, you will fire their spirits. So as one of my favorite actors, Robin Williams, said one of his best roles, carpe diem, seize the moment, make some friends, and have a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ShoebKagda, the founder of Indonesia Economic Forum, as well as host of today's program, for your welcome address.
We would now like to invite Ms. Faeza Sirajuddin, the coordinator for the Indonesia Youth Forum.
Good morning, everyone. Morning, everyone, and welcome to the first ever Indonesian Youth Forum. I mean, it's great for me to see so many young people here as we begin this discussion about the future of education. Because I believe, and I was telling Shoeb when we first started having this conversation, I believe we cannot even begin this discussion without including the people whom it most affects. And who does it most affect? It most affects you guys, the youth of today, the inheritors of the future. Now, before I begin, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am not as young as you guys. In fact, I'm willing to bet that I'm one of the oldest persons in this room. Here's a little bit of perspective for you. I started in the education industry before most of you were even born. So because I am old, I am going to say something old people say all the time. Let me tell you something. Things were very different when I was young. I'm sure you've heard this from all the adults in your life, right? Your parents, your teachers, they tell you this all the time. There was no internet, no smartphones, no looming AIs poised to take over your jobs and the world as they outgrew their programming and became smarter than us. In the 25 years that I've been teaching, the world has changed exponentially. And you know what has not matched that rate of change? Education. Now, okay, yes, sure, some things have changed, right? You guys get to do your research on the internet. We had to do it going to dusty old libraries. You guys get your notes delivered to you on PowerPoint presentations. We had to look at scrawlings on chalkboard. So some things have changed. But fundamentally, at its core, it's still the same. Let me ask you a couple of questions, all right? Show of hands. How many of you are going to be sitting for the IGCSE or the O-levels in the next 2 to 5 years? How many of you are sitting for the IB diploma? A-levels? Any other major exam that you have to sit for in the next 2 to 5 years? Anybody? And how many of you are preparing for those exams by reading your textbooks and your classroom notes and trying to memorize as much information as possible? Is not how you're studying for your exams? How many of you are looking at past year papers and trying to figure out the patterns of all the questions that they could ask you and the keywords you need to know to match every single answer? How many of you are doing that? I know the drill, man, because when I was in school all of 5,000 years ago, that's exactly how school was when dinosaurs roamed the earth. Nothing has changed. So while the world has changed and is changing everywhere all around us, education remains the same. To fill kids' heads with as much information as possible, to regurgitate in an exam, to get a good grade, only to forget 75% of everything you have memorized within 1 year of the exam, never to have to use in your life ever again. And for a while, that made sense. In a world before the internet, before smartphones, before Google Translate and Google Maps, before all of that, knowledge was hard to come by. So the person who was the most valuable was the person who had the most knowledge. It's as simple as that. The smartest person in the room was the person who knew the most stuff. But we all know that's not true anymore. We don't need some bookworm feeding us with information when we have tablets and phones and other devices connecting us to limitless storehouses of information. I don't need to learn how to speak Bahasa or Hindi or Spanish or any other language because I can ask Google Translate. I don't need to know what the derivative of X is because there's some computer program somewhere out there that will solve that equation for me. I mean, seriously, guys, what's the point of education if everything I want to learn, I can find out from reading a book, watching a video on YouTube, surfing the internet? Education seems to have become archaic, become irrelevant, and the only one that hasn't figured that out yet is education itself. I mean, think about it, everybody. If the most valuable thing is still knowledge and still knowing the most stuff, then boy, do I have bad news for all of you. The digital world and technology is more valuable than any single human being. I have a problem with that. Don't you? That can't stand. It's not that we human beings don't have value anymore. We just have to redefine what value is. If machines are getting better at being machines, if robots are getting better at being robots, then we human beings, we need to get better at being humans. If technology is freeing us up from the daily grind, then instead of bemoaning that it's replacing us, we need to think about how we can fill that time with moving forward, how we can become better, how we can make the world better, how we can keep devising processes and systems and machines to keep allowing us to move forward and keep getting better. And for me, that is the fundamental point of education as we move forward, to help us learn to be better at being humans. So as we think about the future of education moving forward, I'm suggesting that the conversation should not only be about the kinds of technology we can bring into the classroom or how we can use technology to further the gains of education. I'm suggesting we need to look beyond EdTech. We need to think about the fundamentals of being human and the fundamentals of remaining human. But do we even know what that means? Can any of you tell me what it means to be human beyond anything that technology can replace? Ethics, empathy, human emotions, kindness, creativity in the arts. I'm not talking about any of those, even though I strongly feel they're very important and highly undervalued. But I'm talking about human skills that make us valuable in the workforce and in the world. I'm suggesting that when we talk about the future of education, we need to talk about learning to become better human beings, learning to think analytically and think creatively to solve the problems ahead of us, learning to talk more and listen more to each other, to work better together and feed off each other's individuality and strengths, learning to ask more questions so we can understand the people and the cultures and the world around us rather than just to accept what we are told, so that we can identify the problems that face us before they become unsolvable problems. Learning to bounce back from failures and keep going. Learning to know when to change directions and recognize when something is no longer working and keeps leading us to failure. Learning to have the courage to propose something new, to do something different, to take the first big, bold move, to see and dare to dream what no one has seen or dared to dream before. Learning to take charge and dictate the direction and the conversation, and to be able to bring others along in that path we walk. These are human skills. These are what no technology will ever replace. These are what we need to work on. So how do we do that? Just as knowledge is something that can be studied in schools, so can human skills. Just as knowledge can be measured and can be gauged, so can human skills. Just as gaps in knowledge can be identified and filled by education, so can gaps in human skills. We need an education system that focuses on all of these rather than has these as a byproduct from extracurricular activities and the occasional classroom project. That, to me, is the future of education. Teaching kids and exposing kids to human skills so they can be better at being humans. Being valuable is no longer knowing the most stuff. Being valuable is being the best at being human. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sirajuddin. We would now like to call upon stage Professor AnilSahasrabudhe, the Chairman of All India Council for Technical Education. Can we welcome him with a round of applause, please?
Very good morning to all of you. Namaste from India. Salamat Pagi for all of you. My salutations to the President, late President, B.J. Habibie, who was a great visionary and who thought of this Habibie Festival in Indonesia. I think today he is no more, but his memories live with us all the time to come. My friend ShoebKagda, whom I came to know very recently, we've become good friends. Sachin Gopalan, with whom also I had interactions for quite some time now. Both these young gentlemen, I'm saying young, although one of them has become bald, doesn't matter. He's young at heart. The way he spoke a couple of minutes ago was an indication of his youthfulness. These are co-founders of Indonesia Education Forum and the Orbit Ventura, which is conducting this program. I think, Sachin, thankful to you for organizing such an event here in Indonesia for quite some time. And for the very first time, you have had the idea of introducing a youth festival, and very important. And just now we had IYF coordinator Faeza Sirajuddin speaking so well on the need for education 4.0. When industry is moving towards Industry 4.0, we need to have Education 4.0, and she explicitly mentioned what are the challenges that exist today because of the rate of change that is happening and the kind of technologies taking over the jobs, taking over different tasks, and therefore at the work environment there is a gradual change and the people are not required at all in many cases. So how do we live in such a world, in a place of work, and how human values have to be inculcated? I think thanks to her for introducing this very important concept, which is significant. We are going to have Pasha, who is also going to speak probably after me, and our young MCs, who have been doing such a fantastic job, and students who have come from not only Jakarta, different parts of Indonesia, students from Singapore, students from India, and maybe some students from other countries as well. So it's truly becoming an international youth festival, very, very important and significant. Tomorrow, there are going to be other sessions where 4 important aspects are going to be discussed, starting with education, which is very, very predominant and important, which is the base for learning. So learning is the first aspect. The second aspect is that of work. How do we go forward in the workplaces? What is our preparedness for that? That is the second aspect of that. The third one is play and games. How do we do them? And last but not the least, the living itself. How do we live our lives? I think these are 4 important things which are going to be discussed tomorrow, threadbare. But this youth festival, which is comprising of youth from these at least 3 countries, must discuss these issues because the future leaders come from out of them. Today's leaders will no more be there after 10, 20 years. You are going to have the reins of power, leadership for the entire globe, and therefore your thinking on these issues is very, very important. And therefore, what all you are going to speak in today's deliberations is going to be a foundation stone for the future. I think that's why, once again, I congratulate Shoaib and both Sachin for putting in such a grand show over here. Now, coming to this particular festival, since I was invited, Shaida, you said that you may be the oldest person, but I'm probably older than you. I've crossed 62 years already, going strong. I still feel young when I meet a lot of young people. And being a professor in a university or an IIT, when you meet young people, you will also become youthful. And that's why festivals of such nature convert even oldies like us into young people. Well, everyone keeps saying, during our times, this was not there, that was not there. But let us look at what is there today. And we must look at the way technology is developing, and therefore how learning and education environment is going to constantly change. Quite often, we all talk about solving problems. In fact, governance is nothing but solving problems of the society. Today we have problems in terms of environment degradation. We are facing music. Nations where temperatures used to be very, very low, cold, they have become hot countries. There are countries where there used to be no rainfall, there is heavy rainfall. There are countries where there used to be heavy rainfall, there have been no rainfall at all. I think global environment change is one of the things which is happening continuously, and we must be aware of that. As far as availability of water is concerned, many nations are facing difficulties in providing clean drinking water. For example, in South Africa, many parts of India, I think that is another challenge which the world is facing. We have problems of transportation. We had no transportation systems about 100 years ago, but today, because of too many vehicles on the road, there is a traffic density which has increased so much that there are long queues. A place earlier used to be measured in terms of kilometers and miles between two destinations, but today we talk in terms of time required for travel. You know, sometimes in the morning it is going to be 1.5 hours, maybe in the afternoon it is 1 hour, late night it may be only half an hour. So I think distances are not measured by kilometers and miles. Today we measure them in terms of distance traveled in terms of time. Time is very, very valuable. We have other technologies like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, machine learning, deep learning, robotics. We have issues like blockchain, which has taken over the entire world, and the problems of yesteryears are no more the problems. There are a new set of problems which have emerged. More importantly, what is going to come a decade later or a couple of decades later, no one is able to predict. Even the hardcore technologists cannot predict what is going to come in a decade or so. And that's why when we talk about education, when we talk about universities, learning, we often say that the youth of today are required to solve the problems themselves being not known today, using technologies which are yet to be invented. So we neither know the technologies which are going to come, we neither know the problems which are going to come in the future. But still, our young generation has to be prepared for solving such problems using such technologies which are going to emerge in the future. Now, how do we do that? And that is the real challenge of Education 4.0. That is the challenge of learning. So the routine learning in the blackboard mode or using some of the technologies that are available today in terms of PowerPoint presentation, using internet, is not good enough. I think there must be drastic transformation that is required in the way students are going to learn in the immediate future. And that is the challenge which teachers and students have to understand and solve this problem together. Well, different concepts have started emerging. One of them is called as flipped learning or blended learning. What today universities are going to do is, not every lecturer or a professor is in a position to give an hour lecture. Students will not be interested in listening to a professor for 1 hour, because whatever he is going to teach to you is already available on the internet, on the YouTube. It is available in MOOCs courses. So why does a student require to come to the classroom? And this question is often asked by the students. Today in the colleges, maybe in a couple of years, it will be asked by our students in the high schools and the primary schools as well. Whatever you are going to teach, my good teachers, is already known to me through internet. Then why should I come to the classroom? So the way classroom is going to be handled, maybe immediately, which is happening to happen already, and in the years to come, is going to be, as I said, blended learning. What we need to do is ask the students to watch a video on the topic which is going to be discussed in the class next day in advance at their homes, in their hostels, and come prepared in the class. So that learning takes place by way of self-learning. And this self-learning is also very, very important because, as I said in the beginning, the problems to be solved in the years to come are going to be through technologies which are not known. So a student of today, a graduate of today, tomorrow cannot say that this was not taught to me in my university. The employer will say goodbye. And therefore, ability to learn by oneself, to have a practice of lifelong learning is going to be significant and important. And this blended learning will start lessons in that. So any topic which is going to be taught or which is going to be discussed in the class next day would be obviously be learnt by the students on their own using internet and come prepared for the class. Now what will happen in the class then? In the class, a teacher will ask, whatever topic was given, have all the students understood the basic concepts of that particular topic? Maybe some of the students have understood the concept. Some students might have not been able to understand that. Now, making students to discuss amongst themselves that particular concept, which students who have understood to share with others, is a way of interactive learning which will start in the classrooms. I think this is the beginning of learning. And then, on that topic, if there are any challenges that the globe is facing, whether it is water crisis, whether it is environment, whether it is technology challenge, whether it is AI, whether it is IoT, we must start raising some of the problems and ask students in a group of 3 or 4 to start discuss that problem and how do you find solution to that problem. I think the classroom should become problem solving rather than teaching learning process. And the learning takes place automatically through ways and means of such kind of highly interactive classes. And therefore, yesteryear's classrooms, normally a principal of the school, when he was taking the rounds, if the students are not making any noise and there is a pin drop silence, we used to say that that class is very good, that teacher is very good because all students are riveted to the class. Today it may be the opposite. In a class, if there is no noise, no discussion happening, probably that is the worst teacher because he is only giving one-way traffic of knowledge which students already have. And therefore, today's class, if it is vibrant, lot of movement of students all around discussing issues, I think that is more a better class, and therefore a better teacher is able to handle that class, and the better learning takes place through such mode of action. I think this is what we need to learn, and this is what is started to happen in some of the universities, but we must bring it down to the schools. Restricting students from not using mobile phones, not allowing them to see the content is not going to happen because, as I said, since students are already aware of that knowledge, If the class becomes boring, they will open up their mobile phones and start looking at WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, rather than attending to the teachers. And therefore, very recently, we had an interesting problem in an hackathon, India-Singapore hackathon, which was held in Chennai. And one of the problem statements given to the young college students was to find out what is the attentiveness of the class and derive an attentiveness index of the class. A very interesting problem. Looking at the photographs and videos of students through the cameras which are installed in the classroom, looking at the faces, the way students are engaged, one should be able to identify whether there is an attentiveness in the class towards the teacher or students are engaged in something else, and determine the attentiveness index of the class, whereby teacher will get inputs as to he has to change his style of teaching learning. I think that is the way forward that we need to go. And therefore, when we talk about this Education 4.0, one of the salient features and very important features is asking students to learn what they like. And this is going to be a very different story than what it was in the past. We used to have courses in language, maybe Bhasa in Indonesia, maybe Hindi and English in some other country, maybe Mandarin in China, maybe something else in some other country, but one is the language. The other one is normally students are made to learn geography, history, civics. They are asked to learn physics, chemistry, math, biology, and all such subjects, whether student is interested in them or not. But tomorrow's student will be asked to learn what he likes. And therefore, we must have a system where there may be some minimum knowledge which he must have in all the subjects, but for greater knowledge and emphasis, interest of the students should be the most important thing in the mind. And essentially, it should become student-centric education rather than what teachers or the universities or the schools want to give them as education. And that is another big change which is likely to happen and has to happen. And this is where we are about to move towards. Next important thing, what is important for students is ability to learn from anywhere, anytime. And the courses on MOOCs, which have come from different sources, right from school education to higher education, we don't have to worry whether our school or college has expertise in that area or not, but we can look at the best teacher available anywhere in the world and are able to learn from that teacher, and the grades, marks earned can be transferred to the transcript of the college or the university or the school where we are learning. So we don't have to take classes only from our own teachers, but the teachers from all across the world. And that is very, very significant. And therefore, the type of examination systems which we have been used to has to also change. Today, we are given to understand that when we Google, we get any information at our fingertips. And therefore, why do we require to memorize many of the things? Certainly not. Many intricate subjects, many intricate things, formulae, derivations, we need not learn and remember. We need to learn but not remember. Remembering is the last thing which we need to do. But we should not swing the pendulum to the other extreme. I have got instances, especially college students and school students, if you ask them, you multiply 17 by 7 or 23 by 9, I'm sure none of them will be able to do it, and they will open their calculators or mobile phone to do that calculation. I think certain minimum sums, multiplications and divisions one must be able to do. But what is significant is our question paper should not test only memory. Memory-based questions may be only 25-30%, but the rest of them should be in terms of how much knowledge you have gained, how much understanding you have. Are you able to apply that knowledge to different disciplines? Are you able to critically think and analyze? I think these are the important aspects. We call them as different levels of learning in terms of Bloom's taxonomy, and that is what is very, very significant and important. My friend from China is here. He does testing services for Mandarin, and similarly there are tests for English. But I know that learning language is very simple and easy in the young age. In the age group of 3 to 12, I am confident. I have got my own experience with some of my students and children. People can learn as many as 5 to 6 languages very easily. But if you ask them to learn the script, ask them to write it, read it, I think they will rush away from that. And therefore, language learning should be through listening stories, understanding them, and then slowly you start speaking. Maybe you do some grammatical mistakes, never mind, and gradually graduate yourself into learning, communicating in that language, and probably, if required, you will learn the script at the fag end. I think that is the way forward. I'm thankful to you for introducing that. The world is changing in a big way, and therefore, we all have to change along with the world. And the time has come. And the International Youth Festival of this nature, where all such issues are going to be discussed threadbare by not elderly people, but the youngsters, will pave the way for the future generations and what needs to be done in the future. With these few words, I once again congratulate the organizers for organizing such a grand event, and young students who have come from different countries to think about the world and what needs to be done in the future. I congratulate them as well for participating and give us an input which we elderly people will adopt and make that change happen. Thank you very much. Good day for all of you.
Thank you, Professor Anil. And we'd like to invite ShoebKagda back on stage.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Professor Anil, for a very, I think, insightful and inspiring speech. And like you said, you make every one of us feel today. We're also very honored today to have with us Mr. Jaspal Sidhu, who is the founder of the SIS group of schools. He's an investor. We are very honored to have him with us this morning. He's also a businessman who understands education. And I think we all would like to hear what his take is on the future of youth. Jaspal.
Thank you very much. My name is Jaspal. I've been in Indonesia for 30 years. Jadi bahasa Indonesianya cukup lancar lah ya. I'm not going to speak more than 7 minutes. You know why? Because the youth, the attention spell is maximum 7 minutes. Otherwise, you'll swipe me. Right. Look, I'm going to speak tomorrow. Jadi pesan saya buat anda hari ini is just simply this. I've mixed with a lot of young people. You are the future. And you're going to hear a lot of things from a lot of people. But one of the things as an engineer I like to do is simplify things. So when you go home, you remember some things that people said. The first thing is I interview a lot of people like you, graduates, high school students, in Indonesia, in Thailand, in Philippines. And there's one problem in Indonesia. Dan saya punya hak ngomong ya, karena saya udah kerja di Aceh, di Lampung, di Kalimantan. Mungkin saya pernah lihat Indonesia cukup inilah, mungkin lihat lebih banyak kota dari kalian. The problem in this is a lot of the youth nggak ada PD. The lack of confidence. Now that's my problem when I interview. You have so much of knowledge, but you just do not have the confidence. And this largely comes from culture, comes from hierarchy. But I will tell you, the world out there is not going to respect a lot of these things. They want to have children who are confident. One of the things I say, there's this thing called PACE, P-A-C-E. P P stands for perseverance. Don't give up. In this current internet age, you give up very quickly. I can't find people that in my office, I find them giving up too easily. I can't find young people who say, I'm going to try again. They're less and less. Karena apa? Because of impatience. The internet is making you very, very impatient. Number 2, analytical thinking. PACE. A stands for analytical thinking. You got to think. You got to look at the solution. You got to look. The problem today is the internet gives you answers, but the internet doesn't make you think. Some teachers these days say, I don't need to teach my children because all the answers are up there on the internet. But who can pick this and put it together? Who can see how whatever you see on the internet, you got to make sure half of that is not fake news. How do you apply? So analytical thinking. C for me stands for collaboration and communication. Tomorrow I'm going to speak a little bit about that. And many of you go to school. Just look at the way your classroom is arranged. Does the classroom allow you to collaborate? You should ask your teachers. You have the right as a student to rearrange your classrooms because it is your future. E stands for entrepreneurism. Everyone wants to be Makarim, be the next Gojek. It's okay. You may succeed because 4 of the 6 unicorns come from Indonesia. There are so many clever people here. E stands for entrepreneurship. And that comes from trying, thinking, collaborating. The final point I want to talk to you is about personal branding. A lot of you are main Instagram kan? Foto, wah, I'm at Marriott Hotel, I'm in Spain, wah ini saya lagi makan di mana, ya kan? Nanti rambutnya begini, nanti mutar lagi. It's the same face, by the way. The point I'm trying to make, what are you trying to do? You are trying to personally brand yourself. But out in the corporate world, this doesn't work. Personal branding comes from 2 things. Reputation, image. And let me quickly talk about this because I said 6 minutes. Let me talk about image, the easier part. Image comes from confidence, public speaking. Spend some time going through some public speaking courses. One of the things that I like to do is conduct public speaking courses for youth. Very important. Public speaking. The second point is reputation. Integrity is missing in the world. Everybody wants to do business. But I tell you, integrity is missing in the world. You are in the driver's seat. Whatever business you run, whatever handshake you make, whatever thing that you say, your word is your bond. Integrity is missing. I'll talk again some more. I said it's a 6-minute thing. There's a lot of talent here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much for your valuable words, Mr. Jaspal.
We'd like to invite everyone to give another big round of applause for all the speakers who just were on stage. And now we'd like to move on to the debates, and we'd like to invite Vatsal Dudaya to come up to stage and introduce the debates.
Good morning, Indonesia! Come on, guys, you can be way more energetic. Hello there. My name is Vatsal Dudhaiya, and I'll be your friendly neighborhood debate chairperson for the day. And as you all know, we're here for the debate of the International Youth Forum. The topic of said debate is standardized testing has no place in the future of education. It's quite a lengthy topic with a variety of opinions. You guys must be wondering what standardized testing is. Well, standardized testing is basically any form of test that, one, requires all the test takers to answer a common set of questions or a selection of questions from a common question bank. And two, it is scored in such a way that it makes it possible to compare the individual scores of students as well as groups of students. I, for one, am open to discussion on this topic, but I'm pretty sure that all the students here don't enjoy taking the test that much, do you? I mean, it's like every student's dream that there would be no tests at all. Well, in reality, this is indeed a topic that requires our attention and must be highlighted to bring out the people's opinions, especially the students. So in today's debate, there are two schools participating. SMA Al-Azhar Kelapa Gading, which will be playing the role of the opposition. I'd like to call on the speakers for the proposition, Aulia Puspitasari, Muhammad Miladi Fauzan, and Alia Zahari Harahab. Please come on stage. Are they here? Yeah, please come on stage. Yes, guys, please put your hands together. And playing the role of the opposition will be NPS International School from Singapore. I'd like to call on the speakers, Adit Mittal, Vishrut Jairaj, and Madhu Ramachandran. Yes, guys, please put your hands together for NPS. So before we start, I'd just like to tell you guys, if you guys really hear something that you agree with, feel free to applaud. I mean, it's not just a confidence booster for the speakers, but it also gives the impression that the audience is just purely amazing, which I'm sure you guys are. All right, so let's start with the first speaker of the proposition, Aulia Puspitasari.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you. I agree about the standardized tests are not have, it's not have place in the future because standardized tests should not be the sole instrument in assessing the academic progress of a student. This is because standardized tests were not created to suit or meet the unique needs or particular classroom settings. In a school, without a trained or qualified psychologist, the result from the standardized tests can be misinterpreted or simply overgeneralized. Thus, it is important to seek the service of professionals who are trained to interpret scores. And finally, it is easy to overlook certain factors such as physical state and economic backgrounds that could affect the score of a student in a standardized test. Thank you.
Thank you, Alia. Thank you. You've given us a lot to understand. Your statements remind me of a quote from James Dyson that the one-size-all approach of standardized testing is convenient but quite lazy. Now I'd like to call the first speaker of the opposition, Madhu Ramachandran.
Good morning to one and all present here today. Today, my teammates and I will be speaking against the subject matter at hand. Now, what are standardized tests anyways? They're examinations that are administered and scored in a standard and predetermined manner, which require all test takers to answer similar questions in the same way. These tests have several advantages which render them very important in the future of education. Their various benefits include that they allow for comparisons of the relative performances of different students to be made across several schools, both nationwide and internationally. It helps in analyzing their progress as well as the accountability of the faculty. We don't live in a utopia where this can be done without standardized testing. Standardized testing usually comprises of multiple choice and true and false, because along with modern computer scoring, it's quick, efficient, and consistent. We live in a world of constant growth and progression, where skilled people are in high demand. In the future, standardized testing will allow unbiased selection of the best. Although widely debated, alongside computerized scoring, this reduces subjective and biased evaluation. Now, it's a very significant and fair method. Now, in the future, what we learn might change, but what we test should change too. But it should still be tested in a fair manner. The doubtless technological advancements of the future and anticipated automation will assist in making this method of examination much more prevalent. The technological revolution will nearly eradicate less skilled jobs, and hence there must be a fair method of picking the best skilled and eliminate the possibility of favoritism. This method has and will continue to amass a universal appeal and will cater to every type of student. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhu. Guys, let's have a huge round of applause for Madhu as well. So, Madhu told us some really important things. She told us that standardized testing provide important information about teacher quality, accountability, and they also allow for comparison and achievement. These are some really strong points. Let's move on to the second speaker in the proposition, Alia Zahari Harahap.
Thank you. So we think that the world evolves. So education needs to follow that evolvement. In this era of Industry 4.0, people seek for students that have skills and experience, and not just based on their exam scores. If this problem stays, many students will only chase scores and careers without the experience that are required that inhibit interpersonal skills that we gain, but we waste to study for something that doesn't really have impacts in our future lives. Knowledge doesn't always come from books and pieces of papers. Humans also receive knowledge from their past mistakes and how they learn to get back up and restart. This is how some of us receive skills that are needed. The value of skills and experience is so much more than some knowledge that you gain in a book.
Thank you, Alia. Let's have a huge round of applause for Alia. Now, guys, Alia told us some very important points as well. Both sides are extremely prepared. Alia said that if the purpose of learning is just to score well on a test, then we've lost sight of the real reason for learning. Now, let's move on to the next speaker in the opposition, Vishrat Jairaj.
The initial implementation of standardized testing dates back to approximately 2,000 years ago. The Han dynasty of China were the very first ones to enforce the use of any forms of standardized testing, and it has been proven to be successful ever since. These tests improve problem-solving skills through application-based questions, which will be useful in the future where a lot of mechanized work will be done. In the future, the improvement in technology and standardized testing will go hand in hand. The improvement in technology will also help to remove the bias in testing. I would like to conclude by reinforcing that standardized testing will have a role in the future, and the only change that is possibly going to happen is the change from pen-paper tests to digitized tests. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishrat. So, you would agree in saying that standardized testing provides equal and equivalent content for all the students, right? That's what you said as well. So let's have a huge round of applause for Vishrat as well. So next speaker from the proposition, Muhammad Miladi Fawzan.
Thank you. Okay, we talk about technology education. We know that globalization and modernization already happen in the world. It brings many impact for life and education life. Modernization creates new way for students and teachers to give and take the lesson in school. It's really helpful and make it easier to education life. Not only with exams, technology education can change the exam with new method. We can also rate the students' learning ability by their creativity, confidence, honesty, that tested by technology facilities, and we'll see the good prospect for their life.
Thank you. Yes, guys, you can keep clapping. Come on, guys. All the participants are doing really well. You should appreciate it as well. All right, next speaker and the last speaker from the opposition, Adit Mittal.
My opponents raised some valid points regarding why standardized tests should possibly have no place in the future. However, I strongly disagree. My opponents pointed out that it's a very generalized way of judging students and their abilities. I believe in the future there will be change. That's the point of this forum, to discuss the changes that will take place. But what will not the changes will not take place in the system in terms of the university placements that are offered to students who have better qualities and are more able. I would also like to talk about what was mentioned, that the scoring on tests is not the best output of studying and working hard. I believe that these tests are still useful as ever, as like I said, for all your university placements, to differentiate between students. Not only does this help students achieve more, this also pushes them and strives them to work harder, to work to their future. Thank you.
Thank you. So, what is the opposition stated? The opposition has stated that standardized testing brings out the best in students as well as teachers. And there are a number of reasons that it's the best option. It provides benchmarks for the parents and the teachers. While the proposition would agree with the fact that standardized testing has swelled and mutated like a creature in one of those old horror movies, and to the point that it threatens the whole school system. Now, I'd like to thank all the speakers from the proposition and opposition for coming here for the debate. But you know, guys, what I always think is the best part of such a debate? The best part is that we all get to witness great minds battling it out on the motion, all trying their best to prove their points. In the end, some of us will be left convinced by their points, but others will still be skeptical. But the most important feat of any debate is that it forces us to analyze what has been said. We have to contemplate and process all the valid points stated by both sides. And this thought process eventually leads to a deeper understanding of the topic itself, and it will surely bear fruit in the future. Thank you. Thank you to the participants once again.
So thank you all debaters. That was a very interesting conversation. We would now like to call upon Sneha Thomas to lead the panel discussion.
Hello, Jakarta. I'm Sneha Thomas from NPS International School, Singapore, and I will be moderating this panel of student visionaries and what they envision for the future of education. First, I'd like to call upon our four panelists, Patrice Yang, Ira Ovalekar, Rebecca Sopakua, and Manan Rati. Let's dive right into the presentations, and I'd like to invite our first panelist, Patrice Yang. She's a 50...
Hi, it's a great pleasure to be here. Let me start off with one thing. I was from an IGCSE school, CISPIC to be exact. We stopped arts and music at grade 9. We limited every single student's creative possibility. And then I moved. I moved to AIS, an IB school. In all honesty, it's not that much different. We choose our subjects from a preset list. We have no choice. Well, our choices are limited. They are there, but they're very much limited. It's like seeing a horizon, a beautiful skyline, and then seeing a black streak just mar it. Those are our dreams being marred. In our education world today, it's full of exclusivity. There's no inclusion. Standardized testing is a thing. Grades are determined based on how well you memorize things. There's a lack of consideration for those that are of unconventional intelligence, those of special needs, and those of health disorders. Your grades are based on age, on the year you were born in, instead of how able you are, instead of how smart you are as a human being. They don't teach you how to do taxes. They don't teach you what taxes are. They teach you what f of x is, or how to graph an equation that you won't even use in 10 years. Testing is generalized. They're not made to suit every single individual in a certain school. Instead, they're made to suit the general public. No matter how smart, how dumb, or how plain idiotic you are, it doesn't matter. As long as you're a student in that school, you have to take the exam, no matter what health risks you have. And in all honesty, after you finish a test, what do? You go to your friends. How much did you get? That is our basis for intelligence. Not how good you are in your life, not how good you are at, say, driving, but it's how good you are at doing equations in maths for something that you won't even need. The education of tomorrow should change. Why? Because people are different. We're unique. We're human beings. We have flaws. The people of tomorrow should understand that education is supposed to be made for every single person and not just one person in particular. There should be an increase in inclusivity, whether or not it be because of special needs or because you're disabled. A greater understanding, a higher support system, meaning that the amount of teachers that are entitled and able to help students in times of need should be increased. There should be a greater understanding of everyone's needs and wants, not just the simple majority or the ones that can simply afford it. There should be classes that teach student life skills, how to cook, how to drive, how to support yourself, and how not to starve during university when you can't budget yourself, how to not survive on simply Indomie when you're overseas. Classes that teach you how to do taxes and not be tax evasion, instead of teaching you what 1 + 1 is. That is useful to a certain extent, but the amount of usefulness, it's completely immeasurable in comparison to everything else. Tenure shouldn't exist. Bad teachers are allowed to stay in schools just
more prevalent than ever before. An effective and life-changing educational experience becomes more important than ever before. After all, education is the process of facilitating learning and the acquisition of knowledge, skills, values, and habits. And that being said, it's also very important to note that education is a human right, and it is therefore fundamental for human social and economic development and a key element for achieving lasting peace and sustainability. In the last 10-15 years, while technology has transformed most industries, it has also made its pathways into the field of education, and I feel that this could well be the onset of revolutionizing how students of education, and I feel that these technological advancements must be harnessed to implement creativity and innovation in the future of education. Technology, I feel, will bring schools all across the world closer. Schools could partner with far-off countries and work on projects together. A school in Indonesia could partner with a school in Argentina and work on an afforestation project, growing trees together, exchanging notes, and tracking the progress as a part of a science or geography project. So then, what will be the role of teachers? Teachers will no longer be the only source of knowledge, but I feel they will instead facilitate the learning process and provide the necessary guidance and mentoring for students. I feel that it will also be important for teachers to nurture skills and values of empathy, creativity, collaboration, ethics, and critical thinking. Of these, I feel the most strongly about creativity. If children are going to be the future and we are going to create the future together, then to create, we need creativity. Today's children are going to be the workers and leaders of tomorrow. They are going to be leading the world tomorrow, and so they must be empowered with creative thinking. People often think that creativity is to do with the arts, but that's just one of its expressions. The true essence of creative thinking is problem solving. The problem solving that can lead to social change, cultural change, political development, and economic progression. The problem solving that is the baseline for entrepreneurship and innovation. So these are a few other factors that I think will shape the future of education. There is going to be a lot more adaptive learning, which is where students will learn with study tools that adapt to their own capabilities. Above average students will be challenged with higher tasks, and students experiencing difficulty will get the opportunity to practice more until they reach the required level. I feel there will also be a lot more scope for experiential learning, where schools will provide more opportunities for students to obtain real-world skills that are representative to their jobs, and they will learn through experience. This means that curricula will create more room for students to fulfill internships, field trips, mentoring projects, and collaboration projects. Students will learn with different devices, different programs, and different techniques based on their own preference. I feel memorize their material, and they forget it in a day. And that really brings about the worry of the fact that exams may not validly measure what a student has obtained during their learning process. And I feel that in the learning process, that is when you can best test the knowledge of a student, and the application of this knowledge can be tested when they are doing project work in the field. I feel that students will become a lot more involved in forming their curriculum, and they will partner with experts and students to maintain a curriculum that is more contemporary and up-to-date and useful. To sum it all up, I believe that education in the future will be personalized, unbounded by time, place, and method. It will also be mixed-aged. But most importantly, it will not be something imposed upon children, but something that will arise from a child's natural drives and instincts to prepare themselves for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ira, for expounding upon the role of education in connecting our world and alleviating issues like poverty, inequality, and disparities across economic, political, and social sectors. Let's welcome our third panelist, Rebecca Christianse Pakwa. She's 14, studying at Sampurna Academy, and her dream is to pursue business law or finance after leaving school.
You know, Girl Meets World, a Disney show, taught me a lot more than school would have ever taught me about real-life problems. In one of the episodes, it taught me the secret of life. Corey, their teacher, asked him a question. Al washes a car in 6 minutes, while Fred washes the same car in 8 minutes. How long will it take Al and Fred to wash the same car together? Farkle, the genius, quickly answers 25.7 seconds. Wrong. Corey said, with this, you will find the secret of life. Long story short, the answer is people change people. That is the secret of life. My point is, you can't solve math equations to solve real-life problems, which brings me to my question. Is the education I am receiving right now applicable to my daily life or for the future? Ladies and gentlemen, if we were to survive the avalanche of knowledge that we are inheriting, we would need technology. Technology has evolved ever so rapidly in such a short time that envisioning a future of education without privileged students with transferable skills and a keen thirst for knowledge is close to impossibility. Extraordinary amounts of information is already available on the internet. Its use has been so common that Google is now a verb to searching information on the internet. Education is a tool that gives us perspective of life. It is the reason that you and I are here today. Yet, despite our age differences, the way the materials that are taught are still the same. I still write my exams on paper. I still use textbooks, and I am still expected to write notes on paper. Education hasn't changed, so it needs to adapt for the future and for today. I will highlight 4 points that needs to change. It is basically our new oxygen. Who here doesn't have a phone? Nobody. Books are outdated, and now you have to use ebooks that can be used from PCs, laptops, or even phones. And we now need to learn information communication technology. The concept of education is available to all. In Indonesia, people living outside of major cities have to trek their way to school. Yet, I hear this. Governments around the world must provide adequate infrastructures so that everyone has equal access to education, without teaching them basic addition. My third point is education on morals and real-life applicability. As much as we love technology, we lose ourselves too. The more we are integrated to machines, the more we become one. Chivalry is dead. Ethics aren't taught in schools anymore. Gone are the days when people open the door for you. Manners is what differs us, humans, from robots. Even animal has compassion. Have we stooped that low that we are basically a lower level than animals? Humans create machines, but what is the point of machines if in the future there are no more humans? My last point is focus, streamlining. Think of education as a suit to the measurements of who's going to wear it. My measurements will be different from yours and the person next to you, and so on. Streamlining is just like that. The education of the future should focus on students' potentials. Education, while aiming for mainstreaming, should welcome customized education, the strongest suits of students. The internet has leveled playing fields in a lot of areas. It now lies in the danger of information anarchy and the generation of hoax, or known as fake news. It is a challenge now to know real information and whether it is true or not. The future of education, ability to continuously address the risk of fake news, even through upgrades of technology for future generations. Elements constant is humankind's hunt for beloved Mother Earth, the most beautiful for the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca, for questioning the relevance of an archaic education system in a modern world. And lastly, I'd like to call upon our final panelist, Manan Rathi. He's a 15-year-old boy studying the IGCSE curriculum at NPSI Singapore. His passion lies in the futuristic subjects of artificial intelligence and machine learning. He wishes to acquire PhDs in these subjects, educating himself to the extent possible.
Good morning, everyone over here. Dear friends, I know you're pretty bored right now. I'm going to try to be brief, if not a little entertaining. Next slide, please. Hello, everyone. My name's Manan Rathi, and I'm from NPSI Singapore. And today, I'll be expressing my thoughts on the future of education. Education is a $1 trillion industry, and it's becoming bigger. OECD countries devote 11.3% of their public spending to education, an average of US $10,493 per student per year. Spending per student on primary and secondary education has increased by almost 15 to 20% of total public expenditure on education by 2030. It's growing. There are more young people who want to be educated, but also because the level of education among global population is increasing. People are making the link between economic success and education. Next slide. Education must adapt to the fourth industrial revolution. Technology is transforming how we live, work, play, and think. And it's happening more quickly and on a larger scale than any point in human history. Education needs to equip today's young people with the skills to thrive in tomorrow's world, even if we don't know what it looks like right now. Computers can not only be programmed to fulfill many human tasks, but learn how to do things for themselves, applying their process powers to massive data sets. Within just a few years, developments in technologies such as artificial intelligence, robotics, nanotechnology, and 3D printing will transform most occupations. This is a very different world. Conveyor belt for sorting, training, disciplining, kind of factory for themselves. If you look at early images of the factory and early images of schoolrooms, there's not a lot of difference, says a sociologist and education specialist John in Australia. In many aspects, things have changed a little. In today's classrooms and lecture theaters, students are still expected to sit in rows and listen to the teachers speak for hours at end. This industrial classroom is no longer fit for purpose, argues an educationalist. Schooling is a preparation for the future and continues to anticipate a social order what is on its way. Next slide, please. We need to shape it for the 21st century. Next slide. How do you teach a digital native when they can just Google it? With a world of readily searchable knowledge at our fingertips, we don't need to memorize facts anymore. In fact, many things we traditionally learned at school might start feel a little pointless in this digital age, like handwriting, the rules of spelling, and grammar and foreign languages, all what I'm bad at. But we'll need new skills to help us manage the formidable tools at our disposal. We need to know how to interpret search results, critically assess the quality and veracity of information, and make ethical judgments about how to use it. And we need to think creatively and come up with solutions to increasingly complex global problems. In the future, work will be structured around projects, not processes. And that's an important trend in education also. That means blurring traditional educational boundaries, and instead of splitting learning into different subjects, topics are taught in a more holistic and a real-world way. So a lesson on the Vikings might include learning about history or geography, writing stories, or working in a group to design and build a boat. And that's the plan. This is a phenomenon-based learning. It emphasizes skills as communication, creativity, and critical thinking, and better prepares students to apply their knowledge in the 21st century workplace. In this new world, the teacher plays a very different role. Today's students are the first generation to be grown up with internet, and the first to be educated by it. For both students and teachers, this new learning journey is an uncharted territory. And so, how can the teachers teach the students? That's something to think about. Next slide, please. Transforming education will be expensive, like way more than it's right now. And we need more, better quality education buildings saturated with the latest technology. As education expands in the East, there's a need for new teaching spaces to accommodate a rapidly growing student body. Meanwhile, the students in universities of the West, many built in immediate post-war periods of the 1960s and 1970s, are ill-suited for the new learning styles and a need in improvement. But who's going to pay for this? Next slide, please. When you can study online, who will go to a campus? You tell me. Institutions can have global presence just by putting their courses online. And students can study at globally renowned university without even leaving the house. That's the dream, come on. Massive online open courses, or MOOCs, are distant learning programs with no entry requirements, completed via the internet, and available to an unlimited number of participants. The education sector, many small and medium providers will eventually consolidate into few market leaders. Globally branded universities like Oxford, Cambridge, Berkeley will start to become true global brands. And that hasn't happened before, because before you always had to go to a campus, sit in a lecture hall, and listen to a person go on and about a thing which you don't even like. Next slide. Now this is my vision for the education. So a couple of days back, when I was talking to my grandfather, he had stated that when he was young, he had hoped that his grandchildren had an education which was interesting and easier. And today, I, at this junction, hope for the very same thing, that the education of my grandchildren would be easier and more interesting. The main key changes I would try to bring into current education at this moment, immediately, is that more field or practical work should be done rather than tests. more time understanding key concepts than mugging up for tests which you don't even want to learn. More technology-driven education rather than plain white old boards with the teachers scribbling on the board. And more student-led learning than listening to the teachers speaking at multiple hours at end and you don't pay attention at all. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, Manan, for highlighting the problems within the current education system and providing feasible solutions to revolutionize it. And once again, let's put our hands together for our 4 wonderful panelists. Audience, we will be having a question-answer session now. I'll kickstart it with 2 questions of my own, after which I'll open the floor for any and all questions. The questions can be to the general panel or to specific speakers. Mics will be passed around, and please remember to keep your questions precise and concise. Firstly, to the entire panel, I think we've all reached a consensus that knowledge-based education is not the way forward. However, does the panel agree that without some basic acquisition of knowledge, application of said knowledge will not be possible? How do you think that the acquisition of knowledge and application of said knowledge can be integrated? And it's open to anybody.
To add on to the final forum speakers presentation, it is required for you to have a certain amount of intelligence in order to implement the intelligence to make it into something solid and concrete. However, more practical work should be done in comparison to, say, essay work. Instead of sitting in class writing, say, an essay about how economics work, go to an economist, ask them questions, interview them, understand it from their point of view, and implement it in a way that is more mature and adult instead of just being simply students.
Thank you. That's a very relevant answer. And to Rebecca, I'm so sorry. Manan, please do answer.
Follow up to your question. I believe that you do need prior knowledge to specialize yourself from other people around you. If you don't have any prior knowledge, how is that going to separate you from everyone else? That certain knowledge you have sets you apart. That's what makes your creativity important. And that's what will revolutionize education.
Thank you, Manan. To Rebecca, you did mention that education should be streamlined. However, in a world with a growing population and so many children, how is it possible for the education system to customize education for every single student?
See, the thing is, for example, right now I'm in 10th grade. Last year I was in 9th grade. I have no passion for science whatsoever. No offense to those who like science. But last year I take chemistry. This year I take physics. I believe that it's basically wasting my time if I want to pursue business law or, per se, finance. You see what I'm saying? Because why would I need to learn the things that I'm not going to possibly use for my future?
Awesome. Thank you. So to any audience members who have questions, please do stand up. We will get a mic to you. Yes, Vatsal.
So I have a question for all the panelists. Like right now, we're always told constantly to think out of the box and be innovative. But as you all said, the current education system is not stimulating us to do so. How do you suggest we make ourselves more innovative in school?
Could you rephrase your question, please?
Basically, what I'm trying to say is, how can teachers, how can the education system help us be innovative, which I believe is not currently happening?
So how can innovation be taught?
Yes.
Is the question.
Right now, we are in the same school, right? What's up? We are in the same school, right? You know the amount of tests we do in a year, and it's killing it. If we do more critical thinking activities or more problem-solving questions, rather than mugging up for tests, that would help. That would increase innovation at the moment itself. And that's the way forward. Rather than studying for tests, do more questions like this. More real-life problem skills. Like, how can you possibly come up with solutions in the real life and how you can implement it? And then maybe publish it later on.
Please do add on if anyone we'll go across. Okay, everyone can say this.
I come from a school of Sampurna Academy, and one of the things that Sampurna Academy is known for is STEAM. It stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math. we have this project for STEAM every year, and it's divided into innovation study and research. Basically, with these kind of projects, it's more practical because you're supposed, as students, to research. That way, you're more innovative, and you have a lot of people from the innovation winning things.
Thank you.
It is my own personal belief that innovation cannot be taught. It can only be encouraged by your personal peers or your teachers. I go to a school called Australia International School here in Pejatan in Jakarta. And in this school, the teachers allow you to act freely on what your mind desires, not in a way that allows you to rebel, but in a way that allows you to perhaps be more innovative in regards to what you have in front of you. So instead of giving you instructions, they'll just be like, hey, you have this, please make this into this. And you have to innovate your way into doing that. Innovation is something, it's like a basic skill. It's not something that a teacher can teach you like 1 + 1. It is something that they can only encourage and nurture.
So that's incredibly interesting because with one question, we've got two separate viewpoints. And let's see what Ira has to add to that.
I feel essentially creativity and innovation comes into schools when opportunities are created to really implement these. I feel that innovation and creativity, it's something that comes through experiential learning, which is where you go and you experience it. You reflect on your experience and you learn from that. Yeah.
The real value of panels like this is that we can all express our different views, and it's up to us as audience members and as viewers to question all of these ideas, which is why I would like to encourage other audience members to please raise any questions that you may have. Yes. Thank you.
A lot of you pointed out flaws in the current education system or objections or things that you wanted to see changed. Something that I felt was that while talking about how the current role of teachers is almost redundant, you did not talk about how the role of teachers, which is important while educating children, can evolve to support the future of learning you want to see. So how do you suggest that can happen?
So the question is essentially, how would you suggest that teachers are also adapted to a new learning system so they can facilitate that instead of be made redundant? Am I right? Yeah.
Okay. So I talked about how education should change. I also believe that teachers should evolve. Right now, we are in a current pattern where the teacher explains things that end for hours and hours, and you don't understand things. Some people do, some people don't. But the teacher should evolve in the most student-based manner. If a certain student doesn't understand anything, the teacher should take the effort, sit with the student, and make them explain the concepts again and again. You can't imagine a student to completely understand the concepts in one go, can you?
Would anyone else? That's very valid, Manan, that teachers should take a more student-centric approach and not just a curriculum-centric approach. Would anyone have anything to add to that? Do we have any other questions?
A lot of you talked about how the education system needs to be completely changed, but we also need to realize that there are positives in our current education system, and the system that we are talking about and discussing also is, of course, a great step in the future. How do you suggest there's a balance between the current education system and its benefits and balance them with our idea of the future, where there's a more student-centric type of approach?
So the question is, how do you think we can strike a balance between the positives of the current education system and what we want to see improve?
Okay, so at least where my school is, we're already using technology. Everyone's already having MacBooks, and we use Google Classroom and websites to learn. I think that should just be more evolved, as in everything should turn into more technology, since the future is basically technology, as the Industry 4.0 is already evolving.
And do any of the panelists agree that there are certain merits with the current education system, things that we have been doing right for centuries? Would anyone like to touch upon that as well?
If only the current education system itself is all bad, there's no way you would be here today. There's no way an Indonesian would be able to speak English. That is a merit, the globalization of education itself. However, in terms of improving the current education system, a way to improve it would perhaps to implement certain features and certain systems that will allow an increase in inclusivity in regards to special needs children. Only a few schools in Indonesia actually cater to special needs children, and the rest are simply left stranded with nothing else to learn on. And that is perhaps one of the most important key features in tomorrow's education.
So instead of changing the entire education system, we can build upon the foundation that our ancestors left us. Am I right? Any other questions?
My question is to Manan Rati. You mentioned about a guy named John in Australia. Who is he and what is his role in the future of education?
Could you rephrase your question, please?
So the question is that you had mentioned a person who is credible, John from a university in Australia. Who is John and what role does he play?
Education specialist John Holm at Associate Design in Australia is one of the most important people in education industry in Australia, and he's been helping to build upon the education system in Australia for the past 25 years.
Thank you.
We have another question from the back. Oh, we have two questions.
Yeah. So there are around 3.7 billion internet users and 4.9 billion mobile users. For the rest of the people and children disconnected from these facilities, how would you make a more student-centric education?
So the question is, in a world where not everyone has equal access to technology, how can we promote that and still facilitate a student-centric education when not everyone is on the same playing field?
We have been learning for the past couple of years in geography that developing countries are becoming developed. And you know that education is improving, and this is the way forward. So if you look at things into consideration, education has improved a lot in these countries. And the people who don't have electricity or technology are now getting previous iterations of technology. And this is the way forward.
So it's not... Oh,
yes,
would you like a follow-up?
Yeah. So, well, according to a study in 2016, there are also over 260 million children that do not attend school at all. How would you connect these children to the current available knowledge and information?
I understand that more than 260,000 students don't have education right now.
Million?
Huh?
Million.
260 million. I understand that. But slowly things are improving. You can't change the whole world at one moment, can you? It takes time. Everything takes time. Give it another 50 years or so. Everyone will be educated. And that is the way forward. Because everyone should get an equal opportunity to make their life.
I think the point is that the number that's 260 million now may have been double or triple that a couple of decades ago. The point is that slowly we are improving. And this forum is about how can we continue to improve. Any other questions? Audience, this will be the second to last question. After this, we will have one more and that will wrap it up.
Good morning. I am a principal and I would like to ask the perspective of the panelists with regard to this one. By the current education system that you are describing, we were able to produce students who are seated on the stage, who are critical thinkers and logical students. I would like to know, because in your last slide, you mentioned my vision for the future of education. If we will do what you asked, if we will grant your request, what is your vision of the future students? How would you be like in the near future if all your requests will be granted?
If all my requests, which I granted, and they're quite a lot, and these are the things I want to change because I really don't like them right now. So example, more field and practical work than tests. Tests are a way to test people's knowledge, right? And this knowledge, only some people understand this. Some people have the brain capacity to understand some knowledge, but other people don't. And introducing more field and practical work will show the kind of critical thinking these students have. And then this will diversify the thinking they have, and that would benefit everyone around us. Because this will come with more possible solutions. The other one, the more time understanding key concepts, rather than continuously testing us on the same concepts again and again, why not explain it? Why not? It will help you. Then it was more technology-driven education. My school right now, NPSI, we're still pretty orthodox. We still go according to previous traditions about writing on a whiteboard with a black marker, listening to the teacher speak. If you have doubts, you raise your hand, ask. I don't want that. I want an education where you understand when you see something, not when you see text, when you see actual visual experiments happening around you. This is what actually helps you. You cannot understand a complete concept when you just look at text. Yeah, that's all.
And I think another point to consider would be that, yes ma'am, we will get to you. Oh, yeah, another point to consider would be that we are the lucky ones. We are the ones who have been fortunate enough to receive a well-rounded education. Whereas, as an audience member rightfully pointed out, there are millions of children who don't. And this panel isn't just about people like us, it's about people like them too. And our final question for...
Hello, my name is Doreen, I'm from Chicago. I am truly honored to be meeting this panel of students and your vision of education of the future. Here's my question. If you did everything that you say you're going to do, you're going to be turning in a whole generation of people who are highly competitive, great problem solvers, and innovators. That's great. My question is, how do you factor fun, spiritual growth, and being a real human being in the future of education?
So the question is, along with problem solving, critical thinking, and other analytical abilities, how do you factor in, if I get the question correctly, ma'am, ethics and moral-based and human-centric education? Was that, or could you please rephrase, perhaps?
My question is, if you did everything you're saying you're going to do, you're going to turn out a whole generation of young people who are highly competitive, great problem solvers, innovators, and entrepreneurs. The question is, how do you factor in fun and spiritual growth to be a better human being in the end?
Fun and spiritual growth? Okay. How do you factor in fun and spiritual growth in learning to maybe holistically improve a person's character instead of just academically?
To become a better human being.
Essentially, yes.
Okay. Your question is one of the best questions I've ever heard. It really got me thinking. So, if a whole generation of problem thinkers and possible entrepreneurs are there, wouldn't that help everyone? Right? It means you're challenging everyone to make better products, to come up with better solutions, which will indirectly challenge someone to do better than they already are, which is fun for some people. Am I wrong? So it would be a fun and spiritual way to think outside the box and challenge yourself about the things you've never done before.
And how about we hear from Patrice and Ira as well?
Okay, so in terms of education and fun and happiness, one of the main causes of suicide rates in teenagers my age and older is simply because of education. We are too stressed because of education, because we are all forced to conform to one specific thing, and we don't have a strong enough support system. If only the future, say, people in power actually do conform to every single one of our requests, one of them being a stronger supportive system and a more inclusive education, the chances of people actually being stressed out because they're forced to do things they simply are not able to do will lower. This will hence, well, retroactively, it will of course lower the amount of people that are feeling pressured due to the education system itself. So fun will actually increase because the amount of stress and time and effort you put into education will yield the same exact results, or even better, because you're doing something you thoroughly enjoy. Fun will increase, and in a sense, those people that have more time to themselves and to enjoy the things they enjoy and to do the things they enjoy most will have the choice to take on a more holistic approach to their lives.
Fun, it could be, people have different definitions of fun. I think that competition will always be a part of life, whether you like it or not. And well, like if I, for example, don't study the lessons that I don't want to study and only learn of the things that I'm passionate about, that would be fun. So that's why I said customized education or streamline, to really focus on what you like so that you have fun doing what you like. So you're not studying something that you don't want to study.
So I think in a nutshell, what the panelists mean is that when we have a student-centric education system where students are encouraged to take up the subjects they're passionate about, they will immediately start having more fun studying those subjects instead of studying material that they don't want to have to be a part of. Thank you so much for that really insightful question. It was the perfect way to end this question and answer session. Thank you to the panelists for all of your opinions and to the audience for listening. Can we have a big round of applause again?
Thank you again for our panelists and for Sneha for taking care of the panelists. And we'd like to invite Natalia, George, and Neil Nair to the stage. Can we have a big round of applause for them?
Good morning to one and all present here, and welcome to the International Youth Forum hosted here in Jakarta. My name is Neil.
And I am Natalia. And we hope to give you a brief overview of education as it stands and why a change in education is vital for the future generations, as well as why it is so important that we discuss it now. The current education system as we know it has been around for about 200 years now, and mainly emphasizes on compliance and conformity, skills that were needed during the first industrial revolution that began in the 18th century with the mechanization of the textile industry using steam and water power. The early 20th century saw the second industrial revolution, when the moving assembly line that used electric power and ushered in the age of mass production. The third used electronics and information technology to automate production.
Today, I think we can all agree that the world is changing rapidly. We are standing on the brink of a technological revolution that will fundamentally alter the way we work, live, and even relate to each other. The fourth industrial revolution is one that is characterized by the fusion of technologies that will blur the lines between our digital, physical, and biological spheres. Robots, artificial intelligence, and automation are no longer works of sci-fi movies. Jobs and skills that traditional education trained us for are at risk of being redundant due to new technologies. As the previous revolutions, the fourth revolution will drastically change institutions, industries, and individuals around the world. More importantly, this revolution will be guided by the choices that the people of today make. That's us, the students. The world in the next 50 years, the next 40 years, will owe a lot of its character to how we choose to develop it, how we choose to plan about it, and how we choose to think about it. This is where education comes into play. Throughout history, human society has adapted education to meet the needs and the challenges of that time.
That's true, Neil. However, what is education? Education is often defined as the process of facilitating learning or the acquisition of knowledge, skills, values, beliefs, and habits. Education must prepare students to become the workforce of tomorrow and to make them sound, ethically minded, and socially conscious citizens. Education must prepare students for life, work, and citizenship.
However, in today's education system, most students continue being taught in a standardized curriculum through rote learning and individual and standardized testing at a one-size-fits-it-all pace. Far too many students struggle to learn as they find it disengaging and lack motivation to continue. Why go to school when you could learn the exact same information faster through a YouTube video or an interactive game?
Why memorize facts for a test when you have all the information in the palm of your hand anyway? Past methods make little sense to today's students who learn and think differently, and they make little sense in relation to the changing workplace, where making use of information is now far more valuable than simply knowing things. Schools are failing to teach students to respond to rapid change and how to handle new information because they're clinging to old methods.
Agreed. Education must transform to cope with the changes of today and to give students the skills that they need to succeed in the new world. Automation has hollowed out the labor market, leaving many skilled workers out of jobs. Skills that are uniquely human will be increasing in demand. These skills, such as creativity, collaboration, and communication, that help students to take this information and analyze it, critique it, ask questions about it, and share it amongst themselves, help them work in a group.
Furthermore, the World Economic Forum states that the skills that complement technology, such as leadership, complex problem solving, and providing more hands-on problems for students to solve, will foster a competitive and creative edge among the students. With so much information readily available at our fingertips, the students of today must learn to analyze and make sense of it, and share and use it in smart ways.
By now, I think everybody's made it pretty obvious that everything is slowly going digital. Without digital literacy, people will be unable to survive, thrive, and contribute to economies in the future. Unlike in the past, every profession will have an interface with technology. Tech awareness and literacy will therefore be needed across the board. However, as technology rises, people might be forced to retreat into their own individual cocoons, socializing less and depending on technology more. Education should ensure that people manage themselves and their communities better in the face of technology.
In the future, ethics will become a major part in any industry as we risk losing our planet and our social connect to each other. Our education system must ensure that students not only learn how to complete a task, but also consider ethical and social questions regarding it. How do our actions shape the safety of others?
How do they affect the environment?
Are they leading to an equitable society?
All these questions will become more relevant than ever before. A grave example of failing to consider ethics was that of Thomas Midgley in 1921, an inventor who was praised by the masses and given several awards for optimizing car engines by adding leaded fuel. However, this leaded fuel led to a massive wide-scale lead poisoning in the air for the decades to come. And today, more than 400,000 deaths in the US each year can be traced back to lead exposure in the 20th century.
As we deliberate on this topic, we urge delegates to consider education in the light of these broader issues and not just core education itself. For education would have succeeded only if it creates better world citizens that power humanity towards many more industrial and technological revolutions in a sustainable and empowering manner. Thank you.
Thank you.
So by now we've heard a lot of people talk, we've deliberated on a lot of topics, but now we want to get to know the audience on a more personal level. So we're hoping that the audience will come up with situations and anecdotes that they want to share with everyone based on the topics that were just spoken of. Anybody who'd like to share something, for instances from their school, from their classroom that they think are relevant to this topic of discussion? I see a hand being forced there. Anybody? Okay, so with that lack of response, we would like to call for a break at this moment. So thank you everyone for sitting with us, for listening to everything, and thank you for being such a wonderful audience. We would lastly like to call... We'd
like to call Adit Gopalan to the stage for his thank you speech. Can everyone give a big round of applause for Adit?